As the sunlight fades into autumn gloom, the rustling of leaves in the cool, dim air gives proof of the coming season. Overhead, the insidious cackle of witches flying pierce the darkness. Horrid figures of silent phantoms stalk desolate paths and candle-lit hallways. And all manner of things, goblins, banshees, and vampires, hide amongst the growing shadows. Thus begins October. Blackwater Media presents Halloween Horrors. Fresh out of nursing school, I got my first real job in a fairly large hospital in a department that I honestly never thought I would ever work in. It was a 6-bed cardiac ICU with rooms that overlooked the city capitol building. It was a very nice unit, and I started out working 12-hour night shifts. The hospital I worked at had 4 other ICUs that were always full, so my unit always ended up being code bed, meaning if someone was arrested or went downhill fast somewhere around the hospital, they came to us. I'd been working there for a year, and I was no stranger to death. Each patient of mine who had died on my shift was usually already on their way out. Their families were by their side, the DNR orders were signed, the funeral home was already picked out. It was rarely ever a surprise. In fact, the only time I was ever needed to do CPR on my shift, it was not even in my department. Anyway, I subsequently went on a nice long 2-week vacation, during which time I got engaged to a beautiful girl. On my first night back, I received a report from the day charge nurse. She said she was off for a few days and suggested to remind the next day charge nurse that the priest was coming in the morning to bless room 4. I thought she was kidding at first, but she was serious. Apparently, while I was on vacation, every patient who was admitted to that room had died. But this came as no shock to me. People died often in our department. And with it being a very religious institution, having a chaplain for almost every department, I just shook it off. Then she said that room 4 was empty, and that it would serve as code bed for the night. Around 2 a.m., I got a call saying that they have someone to fill our open bed. The ICU downstairs was now going to be code bed, so we were getting your run-of-the-mill chest pain, take a look in the morning kind of patient. Nothing to get excited about. We get the patient admitted and all settled into room 4. He was a gentleman about 50 or so years old, very pleasant. His wife was with him, and she looked dead on her feet. I got her some warm blankets and took her to our waiting room that had cots so she could get some rest. Around 3:30, I was watching monitors and the cameras in each room. All of the patients were fast asleep. The cameras all cycled through about 3 seconds each on one small TV we had on the desk. Room 1 was fine. Room 2 was fine. Room 3 was fine. Room 4? There was something in there. It cycled too quickly for me to get a good look, and the doors to the unit were locked. Maybe the other nurse let his wife back in? I walked down the hall and glanced inside, and there was nobody. I shrugged it off. It was late, and I was tired. I was probably just seeing things. I went back to the desk and continued watching the screen. Room 1, Room 2, Room 3, and Room 4. I wasn't imagining anything. There was someone in Room 4. The person was standing in the corner by the window, their figure completely draped in shadow. I couldn't move 1 inch of my body. It cycled through again. This time, it was closer to the patient's bed by maybe 2 or 3 feet. The hair stood straight up on my neck. The next time it cycled through, it was even closer. It stood in the light coming from the hallway, but despite the light, it was still shrouded in darkness. It cycled through again, and it was right next to the bed. My heart started pounding, and I could barely squeak to the nurse on the other end of the desk. As soon as my words formed, and I was able to make some kind of noise to get her attention, the alarm on the monitor went off, signaling that the patient had cardiac arrested. The overhead system came on. A cart is needed in CCU room 4. People poured into the department. Doctors, nurses, pharmacists, respiratory therapists. They all rushed into the room. But I couldn't move. It cycled through the rooms again. Room 4 came up. And this time the lights were on, and there were 10 to 15 people surrounding the bed, doing CPR and slamming meds into his IV. Someone went to get his wife from the waiting room. But there it was, in the opposite corner again. A dark figure watching the scene play out, just standing there. Well, that man died of a heart attack. Room 4 was blessed that morning by a priest, right on schedule. And I put in my 2 weeks' notice. So that's my story. And as you contemplate what happened to me and the experiences with Room 4, remember to have a happy Halloween.